This is my spring 2024 update. It's kind of like an audio newsletter. Welcome to episode 279 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. I am your host, Kim Newlove. My seasonal updates like this one give you an opportunity to get to know me better as I update you on my business, my podcast, my personal life, and what I've been listening to, reading, watching, and playing. It's not all in that order that I just said it, but that's typically the lineup. Just a little background for you, just in case you don't know me yet. Maybe this is the first time you've ever tuned in. If that's the case, thanks for joining us today. Again, my name is Kim Newlove. I am a pharmacist by training. I graduated from the University of Toledo College of Pharmacy with my BS Pharm in 2001. I have experience in a lot of different settings. They include hospital, retail, compounding, and behavioral health. I am not in clinical practice anymore. I do not work in pharmacies. I am a voice actor and a podcast host. I started my voiceover business back in 2017. That was 7 years ago now, and I launched this podcast 5 years ago in 2019. When I say that I'm a voice actor, think medical narrator, not theater actor. I'm not a theater actor at all. Among other things, I provide medical narration for pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, and CME companies, among others. I also narrate audiobooks for pharmacists, usually women pharmacist authors. I teach 2 self-paced online courses. One is about podcasting, and the other is about drug name pronunciations. I love drug name pronunciations. And I also offer consulting services. For example, I help pharmacy professionals and organizations start podcasts. I also help pharmacist authors narrate their own audiobooks. If you wrote a book and you're a pharmacist, contact me. I can help you narrate your audiobook. All right, my LinkedIn profile, by the way, is a great place to get to learn more about me, my services, and the names of some of my happy clients. So if you're interested in that, my LinkedIn profile is in the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. If you want to see my online courses, you can also get to those through thepharmacistvoice.com. Just click on the store tab, or you can go directly to kimnewlove.com. There you go. That's all my background information. Now, let's dig into my spring 2024 update. This covers the end of February 2024 through today. I am recording this on May 22nd, 2024. I'll start with my family first. If you are new to this show, this is where I say something about each member of my family. I am married to my high school sweetheart. His name is Nathan. We have 2 adult sons. Their names are Kraig and Derrick. Kraig is 21, Derrick is 19. Nathan and I have been together for more than 30 years. We started dating back in 1993 and we got married in 2001. At this point, in May of 2024, he is 48 years old, about to turn 49. I am 45. I will be 46 in July. Nathan works in the solar energy industry. He has for many years. With his mechanical engineering degree and his operations experience, he works on the operations side of a business called First Solar, and First Solar is in Perrysburg, Ohio. That's where we live. Nathan loves his job, and I must say that even though he loves his job, he's not enjoying his commute to his job right now. It is springtime in Ohio. If you live in Ohio, you know what that means. We have road construction here, and it is no joke. There is a lot of it, and we have these orange construction barrels. You probably do wherever you are in the United States too, but they seem to pop up every night like flowers. People have even joked that the orange construction barrel is actually our state flower instead of, I think it's the carnation. The carnation is the state flower of Ohio. I don't want to make too much fun of road construction workers or road construction. We all need our roads. We love our roads. We just hate going through the pain of the construction process. So if you need a good laugh, like I do when it comes to construction, there's a song about orange construction barrels on YouTube that you might like. I've got a link to it in the show notes. I would sing it for you, but my singing voice is not that great. It has something to do with orange barrels, looking back at me. That's all you're getting from me. I'm not singing anymore. All right, and that's enough about Nathan, too. Enough about road construction, enough about Nathan. Let's move on to our older son, Kraig. Kraig turned 21 in February. He was 21 on the 21st, in fact. That is his golden birthday. Actually, both of our kids had their golden birthdays here in 2024. Kraig turned 21 on the 21st, and Derrick turned 19 on the 19th of April. Now, although Kraig is 21, and that usually means some sort of a drunken excursion and a hangover, Kraig has autism, and he doesn't really act like a typical thirsty 21-year-old from the United States. He did not get drunk. He did not have a hangover on his 21st birthday. We just celebrated quietly with a margarita at a local restaurant, and Kraig loved it. What's going on with Kraig this spring? Kraig is finishing up his high school year, another high school year here, and he is still a super senior at the local high school. What's a super senior? It's somebody who stays in high school past their actual senior year. Kraig has autism, and because he has special needs, he needs to stay in school for some additional time and prepare for his transition to adult services. He gets to stay in school here in Ohio until he's 22, so he actually has one more year of high school. What's coming up for Kraig this summer? Kraig has a summer program. It's kind of like you could call it summer school. It's 8 weeks long and it starts on June 3rd. He has 4 weeks and then a couple weeks for a break and then 4 more weeks, total of 8 weeks this summer. It's his first time with a new program. We think he's going to do great with it. I'll talk more about it in my summer update in August. That ends the update about Kraig. Now let's talk about Derrick. Derrick is our younger son. Derrick's 19. He just finished his first year at the University of Cincinnati. Go Bearcats! And he plans to return this August for year number 2. Derrick is in a 5-year architectural engineering program, and somehow, maybe because he's pretty smart cookie, he managed to get all A's and B's so far. We're very proud of him. Derrick, if you're listening, we are proud of you, and we think you're doing very well. Now, over spring break, Derrick did something very responsible. He job shadowed a couple of my friends who are in construction. Derrick is considering construction management as a major, and that was really good for him to shadow my friends. Dave Graffiti, Jeremiah Johnson, thank you very much. I remember job shadowing my Uncle Tom, who is a pharmacist and has been on this podcast. Back in 8th grade, I shadowed him, and I know just how much job shadowing can help people. Either you figure out what you do want to do, or you figure out what you don't want to do. So, any pharmacists listening to this, make sure you let those young people shadow you. You can make a difference too. What is Derrick up to now that he's on his summer break? Great question. Derrick has been working as a baseball umpire. That's been his summer job for, I think, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years now. And he's been reconnecting with friends from high school, and he's been traveling. Derrick's academic advisor and his co-op advisor from the University of Cincinnati cautioned him that this would be his last summer off. His last summer off until he graduates in 2028. He'll either be taking classes or working co-op jobs every summer until he graduates in 2028. He's definitely making the most of his summer break so far. Where has Derrick been so far this summer, you may be wondering? I'll just mention the first trip because I got to go on this one too. Derrick has several trips planned, and as I record this, he's actually on trip number 2. The first trip was Europe, and I got to go on that trip with him. We had kind of like a trifecta of Derrick being available for summer break, my sister living in Germany, and my husband willing to care for our older son, Kraig, who needs a lot of help while I traveled. Essentially, all of the stars lined up, and we got to go to the Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. We were gone from May 1st through 12th. That was, I can't believe it, like 10 days ago already that I came back. If you count our country of origin, which is the United States, we were in 5 countries in 12 days. It was a great trip. Very few regrets, and the biggest regret I have is that I lost my favorite hat at a fortress in Austria. It makes for a great story, but also I do regret losing the hat. But if that's my biggest regret, that's not too bad. At this point, I want to caution you that I'm about to tell you about my trip. If you do not want to hear about this, just fast forward this, I would guess 10 to 12 minutes. I'll just give you the highlights, like 1 minute per day, okay? I was gone for 12 days. I'll just give you the highlights and then I'll move on. If you're still listening and you want to hear about this trip, thank you for staying with me. Let's do this. First of all, we left on a flight from Detroit, Michigan to Amsterdam on May 1st. It was a Wednesday. Late afternoon flight, and then we landed in Amsterdam in the early morning hours. I think it was 6 a.m. Amsterdam time on May 2nd. So the first day barely even counts. It was a travel day. Once we got to Amsterdam, we stayed up all day. We did not sleep. We met up with my sister Kelly, and then we visited the Keukenhof, which is a tourist attraction featuring tulips, the flower known as tulips. We called it the Tulip Festival. We said, we're going to the Tulip Festival. The tulips were beautiful and plentiful, and I am glad that I went, but the Keukenhof was extremely crowded with tourists, even in the middle of the day on a Thursday in May, which is the end of tulip season. The beginning is March, the end is May. It might have helped that it was a beautiful day, 75 degrees and sunny. Remember, this is just the highlights, so I'm already on to day 3. The next day was May 3rd. We walked through the red light district. I won't even tell you what I saw. We visited the Van Gogh Museum, which is not in the red light district, but we had to walk through the red light district to get to it. And then after we saw the Van Gogh Museum, we did some sightseeing and we ate some interesting food. I think it was cuisine from Nepal and India. Great food. Of course, we have to eat Indian food in Amsterdam, right? Why not? All right. May 4th. We're already on to the 4th day. See, this is going quickly. We took a 1-hour canal boat cruise in Amsterdam. There are tons of canals, tons of canal boat cruise rides, so we had to do that. And then this is where I'm going to abbreviate the story a little bit. After that cruise, we hopped on a train and headed for Germany. My sister did a fantastic job buying train tickets and getting us from point A to point B. Once we were in Germany on May 4th, we visited Rüdinghausen, Germany. Rüdinghausen is the sister city of Pemberville, Ohio. That's where my siblings and I grew up. I have an older sister and a younger brother. He happens to be a pharmacist. Rüdinghausen is also the town from which my dad's father's family emigrated in the 1800s. So if you can imagine this tiny little town in Germany, and they emigrated from Germany to the United States in the 1800s. I got to go to that town. We had dinner at the one and only local restaurant we could find, and then we did some sightseeing. I'll leave all the details out because I want to keep this short. The next day, May 5th, was a whirlwind. We visited a church in Rüdinghausen. The pastor was able to show us around the church, very old church, and they had an altar from the 1500s. Not only did we get to see this cool altar and the church, but he also showed us a birth record from the 1800s, and it included the birth of one of our German relatives. Very cool. Super old-timey handwriting as well. He was nice, a very nice guy, and he sent home a photocopy of that record with me. That was more than I could have asked for. Very cool. I took some pictures, but to have that photocopy was really cool too. We had to keep moving, so if you can imagine this, we went from the church to a taxi to the train station at 10 a.m., and we then headed to Stuttgart, Germany. The train ride was lovely, and we saw the Rhine River, and there's castles that you can see out the window. Very cool. I'm sure a Rhine River cruise would have been really cool too, but we just rode a train, and I feel like we got some really cool views too. There are definitely things in Germany that we do not have here in the United States, and to see them out the window of a train was fabulous. I loved it. So why head to Stuttgart? It's because my sister lives in a small town near Stuttgart, and also we had a festival to go to. At this point, it is still May 5th. We are in Stuttgart now, and we are at the train station. We put our belongings in a locker. So if you can imagine 3 huge backpacks and then some smaller backpacks. We're shoving everything in this locker at the train station, and then we headed to a spring festival in Stuttgart. I have heard that this festival that we went to is like Oktoberfest in Munich, but it's in the spring. There was food, drinks, traditional German clothing, music, dancing. It was so much fun. I think it was Derrick's very most favorite part of the trip. We all had fun. It was great. Now, it was very late when we got to our hotel in my sister's hometown of Marbach am Neckar. Derrick and I checked into our hotel and we got to sleep fast because we had to meet up with Kelly for breakfast on May 6th. Then we were able to leave our things at the hotel and we visited Kelly's apartment. We checked out the literature archive where she is doing her research as a Fulbright scholar. And then after that, we picked up our gear at the hotel and walked through her cute little town of Marbach. We got to see some sights and then we boarded another train. Where were we going this time? We were going to Bern, Switzerland. Bern, Bern. I'm going to take just a second to tell you that I took German in high school. I am not the best speaker of German, but I did pick up the language quickly when I was a child, so quickly that my tests were always the answer key. This is kind of embarrassing and nerdy, but my tests were always the answer key, and I had to get 2 German pen pals and 1 Swiss pen pal to enrich my experience, I guess, and keep me busy because basically I was the best student in the class and I picked up the language super quick. Some of it has stuck with me, but not all of it. One of the things that has stuck with me is the town names. If I learned it in German and never in English, I will always say it the German way. End of sidebar conversation. Let's keep going. And also keep in mind, I'll say this real quick too, I am oversimplifying this story and just telling you about the major pit stops. I haven't mentioned things like pay toilets at train stations, drunk people on the railroad tracks delaying our train out of Stuttgart, stopping at a cute little bakery in Marbach, visiting the Dutch and German pharmacies that we had seen so far, and so many other little sidebar stories. This is a 12-day recap that would just take too long if I filled in all the details. So please know that we had a lot of fun experiences all day long, every day, and we probably walked about 10 miles per day. Sometimes with everything we brought to Europe with us on our backs. If you've ever backpacked through Europe, you know what I'm talking about. I think that whole sidebar had started when I talked about how I pronounce Bern. We were on a train to Bern, Switzerland. So, what happened when we got to Switzerland on May 6th? I was tired and I was sleep deprived. Derrick tells me I was getting a little salty, salty, salty. God bless young people. They do have a way with words, don't they? So we ate dinner, we did some sightseeing, and we got to bed late. I did not go to bed until at least 1:30 a.m. per my travel journal. I was tired. And then I had to get up in the morning and try to do laundry in a laundry room that I had a hard time finding there at my hotel with a machine that only had German directions and soaps that I did not understand. This is a great story. It looked like somebody went to Costco and bought a big box of powdered detergent, not liquid, powdered detergent, and poured some of it into a random unlabeled container and put a random scoop in the container. How much was I supposed to use? I don't know. I never found out. I just used some. Ultimately, Google Translate and my sister helped. There was no other way to do it. We just figured it out and the laundry got done. It smelled great. Now, in case you're wondering why I was doing laundry in Switzerland, it's because we were backpacking across Europe. You can only fit so much in a backpack. I only brought about half the clothes that I needed. And my son Derrick did too. We needed to do laundry at this point, which was May 7th. We were halfway through our trip. Also, on May 7th, we did the breakfast thing while the laundry was washing, and we actually needed to do 2 loads, so we did some sightseeing and shopping after breakfast while things were washing and drying. It all takes time, right? Even when you do it at home. It all worked out. I am pretty sure that we found the Swiss version of Target during that time while the laundry was doing its thing and we were out shopping and sightseeing. So it was raining and I needed an umbrella. We found a store. It really did look like the Swiss version of Target. It was called Migros. Migros, Migros. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. Derrick borrowed an umbrella from the hotel, which worked out great, but they only had one. So again, I was at this Swiss Target named Migros, and I found my umbrella, among other things. I found a Swiss pharmacy in this store. I talked to a Swiss pharmacist, and they said, go ahead and take a look at how we dispense our medicines. And he showed me to this see through chamber. It was basically, you could look through a window and see a robotic dispensing machine. In all 4 countries that I visited on this trip, I looked at pharmacies in every single country, and none of them looked like American pharmacies, especially not this Swiss one. And the prescription volume overall is seemed much, much smaller. Naturally, I expected things to be different at pharmacies abroad. I just, got to see it with my own eyes. In case you're wondering why we went to Switzerland, we were in the Bern area to visit a family farm. My mom's dad's family had a farm in the Bern, Switzerland area. They emigrated from Switzerland to the United States in the 1800s. We call the family farm the Schaller family farm. Schaller is Schaller, Schaller. And once we got the laundry done, we headed over to the train station there in Bern and traveled to the family farm. No one lives in the farmhouse anymore. We don't know anybody that's there, so we couldn't reconnect with any relatives, but the family farmhouse is still standing. I got to see it. A local farmer bought the house. He lives just next door, so we asked for permission to, look around the house. He uses the house for storage, so he didn't want us to go in the house, but again, we looked around the house and we took pictures. That's about all we could do. The funny thing is, even though I don't know anybody from there, I had never been in the house before, it kind of felt like home. I don't know if you've ever been someplace that you've never been to before, and it just kind of feels like home. It was a quiet farm setting, kind of like where I grew up in Pemberville, Ohio, and yeah, it was cool. It felt like home. Once we were done looking at the farmhouse, we also tried to visit the church that's nearby. We figured that our ancestors attended there because someone from our extended family, from mom's extended family, wrote a book about it, and there's a picture of this church in the book. So we tried to get into the church, but it was closed. We were, however, able to visit a local cemetery, and we looked for the Schaller family name. We did find some gravestones with the name Schaller on them, but they're not old ones like you'd find in the United States. I can go to the cemetery where my great grandparents, probably my great great grandparents, have their gravestones here in Ohio. But back in Germany and Switzerland, if somebody doesn't maintain that grave site, somebody else moves into it after about 20 to 30 years. Don't ask me what happens under the ground. I have no idea. But apparently, the gravestones are like only 20 to 30 years old. That's what I saw with my own eyes. I do not understand burial practices in this part of Europe, but I did get to see what they do. These gravestones are only 20 to 30 years old. It's neither good nor bad what they do, it's just new to me. I did not know what to expect when I came over. I just thought maybe, just maybe, my dead relatives' gravestones might be there. After visiting the farm, the outside of the church, and the cemetery, we headed back to Bern for dinner. We ate fondue because that's what you do in Switzerland, and then we went to bed around midnight. Our days were always jam packed, very full, and I feel like I went to bed around midnight or later just about every day. Now, the next day was May 8th. We were still in Switzerland, but just for the morning. We took a hike up a steep hill and we went to an observation tower and we were trying to see the Swiss Alps. Unfortunately, the weather didn't cooperate. It was overcast, and although we got a beautiful view of Bern from the tower, it was lovely, really. The Alps were obstructed by some clouds and mist, low-lying clouds and mist. It was good that we went. I'm glad we went, but it was a little disappointing we couldn't see the Alps. I know my sister was disappointed, but Derrick and I thought it was like, wow, amazing views. Totally glad I went. After the hike, we went back to the hotel, we grabbed our gear, and then we headed for the train station again. This trip was a whirlwind, let me tell you, lots of train stations. By the late afternoon, we were in Munich, Germany, and we stayed in the Greater Munich, Germany area for the rest of the trip. So this was May 8th, we made it to Munich. We ate dinner at the famous Hofbräu house, and we loved it. Good German food and music. It is touristy. I know it's not true, authentic German culture, but as a tourist, I loved it. Of course I did. Derrick loved it too. We had drinks, food, music, and then we called it a night after the restaurant. We were all tired. Now, on May the 9th, we woke up in Munich and then we headed to Salzburg, Austria. We didn't make it there until the afternoon. We tried to leave on a train in the morning, but as we found out, May 9th is a holiday in Germany and Austria. It is called Ascension Day. It is a religious holiday. We were fighting crowds to get on a train at 11 a.m. Every available seat and aisleway were totally taken up. People were crammed into the vestibule, I think you call it, like the entryway to the train. My sister, she said, let's just wait, and that was fine. So we walked over to the Glockenspiel in Marienplatz at noon. All that is a clock tower that has some sort of a mechanical show. If you've never seen a Glockenspiel, Google it. It's worth seeing, but you've got all these tourists looking up at this clock and waiting for these mechanical elements to play, basically. I don't know how else to describe it. But anyways, we watched the Glockenspiel at noon, and then we hoofed it back to the train station. We got on a train to Austria around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we got there to Austria around 3. Why go to Austria? Why go to Salzburg, Austria? You're probably wondering. The big attraction was Fortress Salzburg. Now, we could have gone on what's called the Sound of Music tour also. I think Derrick and I had kind of intended to go to it, but honestly, we were sleep deprived and tired, and we kind of needed a break. So we got a late start to our day. And also, the trains were very full, so we couldn't have made it anyways. Totally fine. We went to Fortress Salzburg. That's where Kelly wanted to take us, and it did not disappoint. The fortress is up on top of a hill, so we took an inclined train called a funicular to get up there. There were museums inside the fortress. They were very impressive, and the views of the Austrian Alps. Oh my gosh, they were amazing and totally worth the trip. We also ate dinner outside on top of one of the fortress walls at sunset. Very memorable. When people talk about making memories on trips, this is what they're talking about. We made some memories. And then we took the funicular back down the hill and made our way back to the train station. We left Salzburg, Austria around 9 o'clock in the evening. Whew, it was getting late already, and unfortunately, the Austrian border police stopped our train at the Austrian-German border and checked passports. We had a 45-minute delay. I think we were back in our hotel rooms around midnight. Oh my gosh, it took forever. My travel journal said that I was in bed at 1:30 a.m. I was so tired. Friday, May 10th was totally different, though. This was my favorite day of the entire trip. Why? I got to go to Neuschwanstein Castle. It's probably pronounced Neuschwanstein Castle, but anyways, I'll call it Neuschwanstein Castle. Here's the story. 20 years ago in 2004, I went to Neuschwanstein Castle with my husband and our older son, Kraig. Kraig was just 1 year old. Unfortunately, during the tour, I could not hear the tour guide because Kraig had a dirty diaper and he was being loud about it. Anybody that's had kids knows that, having a dirty diaper is no fun and they're going to whine when they have a dirty diaper. So I remember the tour guide telling me to just stay away from the group so everybody else could hear. I was so totally disappointed. I think going to that castle was my pick. I had, picked it out, found the directions to get there, bought the tickets, all the things, and then I didn't even get to hear all the information on the tour. I was so disappointed with my experience that I wanted to return someday, and that day was May 10th, 2024. Little did I know that I would return 20 years later with my sister and my younger son, Derrick. Derrick was made in the USA right when I got back from my first trip to Germany in July of 2004. TMI, I know, but that is the scoop. All right, just a couple more comments about May 10th, then I'll move on. We went on a bus trip from Munich to 3 different destinations. That was the deal. We went first to Linderhof Castle, then we went to Oberammergau, that's a little city in Bavaria, and then we went to Neuschwanstein Castle last. It was a 3-part tour and it took all day, 8:15 a.m. until 7 p.m. Totally worth the price of admission, though. We had a fantastic time. Our tour guide knew what she was doing. The bus driver drove like a boss. It was a fantastic journey. We booked the tour on Viator.com, by the way. If you ever plan a trip to Munich, check out Viator.com, Viator.com. Highly recommend this tour. When we got back, we were tired. They actually gave us a beer to drink on the bus when we were coming back from the castle. It was very non-traditional, but awesome. We ate dinner. When we came back, we ate dinner in Munich, and then we went to bed. Our last day in Germany was Saturday, May 11th. Derrick and I joined a tour group, and we went to the Dachau concentration camp memorial site, which is near Munich. Kelly needed to get back to her little town of Marbach, so we parted ways in Munich. It was bittersweet. Derrick and Kelly and I made a lot of memories together, as I'm sure you can probably tell, and we had a lot of experiences, good experiences, across 4 countries. I was sad to say goodbye, but it was time. Derrick and I then spent almost 6 hours with our tour group, and we enjoyed our tour as much as one can enjoy a tour of a concentration camp. I went to Dachau, same place, 20 years ago with my husband and our 1-year-old son, Kraig. We did the self-guided tour back in 2004. I think we were there pretty much all day, reading signs, walking around, trying to figure things out. And this time, we had an English-speaking tour guide. So in 2024, I would say I enjoyed the tour so much more, having a tour guide rather than doing the self-guided tour. I understood more, and I thought it was important for Derrick, my 19-year-old, to see and understand the terrible things that happened there, not just to the political prisoners and the Jews, but also to the whole variety of prisoners who spent time there. It was more than political prisoners and the Jews. The tour guide did a great job of explaining that asocial people, probably like my son Kraig, who has autism and can't talk, and the homosexuals, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and other people were also prisoners there. And probably the most impactful thing that we saw was the wall with the words "nie wieder," or never again, in English, of course. Those words, never again, are powerful. I think those words could apply to a lot of things in this world that I would never like to have happen again, but so appropriate to have never again printed on a wall there. If you ever visit Munich, may I recommend that Dachau is one of the sites you should visit. Although Dachau is a serious place, the day ended on a funny note. How could that be, Kim? You're probably wondering. What happened was Derrick and I missed our bus. We didn't get on the bus with our tour group. We were about 30 seconds late arriving. Germans are serious about being on time. If you've ever been to Germany, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we literally watched them pull away without us as we walked up. Wah, 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 wah. That's my sad song, I guess. Thankfully, we had just spent more than a week navigating public transportation in Europe, and we easily caught the next bus and then caught up with our tour group at the train station in Dachau. Not a problem. And I think it made our tour guide feel very good to have the right number of people again. I love a happy ending, and this was a great tour. That ends my funny anecdote about missing the bus from Dachau. At this point, Derrick and I were back in Munich. We grabbed an early dinner, headed back to the hotel, and went to bed early. I packed for home before bed, and Derrick packed in the morning. On Sunday, May the 12th, Mother's Day, I woke up in Munich for the last time. We checked out of the hotel and headed for the Munich airport. When my travel agent made our flight arrangements, she factored in this car service. Although I am 100% sure that I could have navigated to the airport via train after, traveling via train in Europe so much, it was actually really nice to be in a car. We didn't do much traveling via cars during the entire trip. My son Derrick loved the trip from the hotel to the Munich airport because, let me tell you, the driver went on the Autobahn and Derrick said, "Hey, how fast can you go on the Autobahn?" And the guy said, "Well, let's see." He floored it. We went more than 200 miles per hour on the Autobahn in his Audi. And Derrick was very happy. He was very pleased with the driver, and we made it to our gate in plenty of time. It's not like the 55 to 65 miles per hour we have here in Ohio. It was nice to get dropped off curbside, and we got to our flight with plenty of time. Our flight took off at 12:15 p.m. Derrick was eating a sandwich in line while we waited to board. I didn't think anything of it, but about an hour later, he was not feeling very good. I just thought it was some simple food poisoning. The sandwich that he was eating, he had made earlier in the morning and it had not been refrigerated. So, in hindsight, he was probably suffering from more than food poisoning. My mom thinks it might have been norovirus, but who knows? I'll never know. He spent the entire flight sick. He was either laying down across 3 seats or in the bathroom being sick. He had so many symptoms: nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, chills, stomach cramps, trouble breathing, so much. At one point, our Delta crew that was, on our Delta flight checked in with us and we had a conversation, and they were concerned. They did a great job of helping him feel comfortable. They were concerned because he was having all those symptoms. It was a lot and all at once. Part of their job as a flight crew is making sure everybody's safe. They did a great job of calling a medical center and taking some directions from, I'm assuming it was a doctor. Derrick ended up with some oxygen, acetaminophen, and ondansetron ODT 4 milligrams. And that was somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean. There is nothing anybody could have done unless there was a doctor on board. So the flight crew did a very good job. They did the best they could. Just in case you didn't catch the Pharmacist's Voice podcast, episode 278, I picked the drug name ondansetron because of this situation. The flight crew did not know how to pronounce ondansetron. They were wonderful, but they had no idea how to pronounce ondansetron. So I picked that drug name in honor of the situation. Derrick was sick for a couple of days once he got home, but he was fine 48 hours later. Right about the time he felt better, I was coming down with the same thing. Ugh, it was not pleasant. I felt good enough to record a couple of podcast episodes last week, and I met my deadlines for Friday, May the 17th, so that was last Friday. But otherwise, yesterday, Tuesday, May 21st, was the first day that I felt 100% better. It took a good week to get me over whatever tummy bug I had. At least it didn't happen on the trip. That ends my Europe trip recap. I know that was probably way longer than 12 minutes, which is what I thought it would be. Again, we were in 5 countries, including the United States, our point of origin and return. That was over 12 days. It was a great trip, and I am so ready to be back. It was a great trip, not too long, not too short. Now for the update about me. Usually when I do the family update, I put my husband first and then the kids second, and then I do myself last. So when I was writing this outline, I looked at what I was up to between February and May so I could have a spring update. What have I been up to this spring? And I noticed that a lot of my focus was on planning this trip. The decision to go on the trip was made in early March, probably shortly after I did my winter update in February. And it looks like I did zero voiceover work in March, April, and May. I focused on this trip and being my son's caregiver. I am my older son Kraig's caregiver. I got my COVID booster and my flu shot on April 16th. I thought that was interesting to see that it was like exactly 2 weeks before I left for my trip. 6 months after everybody else got theirs, I got mine. Don't judge. Although my role as Kraig's caregiver keeps me busy, I'm sure that goes without saying, Nathan and I were also able to get a break from Kraig and go to Cincinnati to see Derrick for his 19th birthday in April. We got to see Derrick, take him out for dinner, get a tour of campus. Derrick showed us the buildings and classrooms that he was in during his first year of college. It was very nice. Great tour guide, our son. And it's a very nice campus. And I think we walked about 10 miles that weekend. It was a lot of walking. Big thanks to our family and caregivers who made this trip possible. It is super rare for us to get away together, and it went flawlessly. We had a great trip. What else do I want to put into the update about myself? Not too much. Back in Perrysburg, we've got nice weather. I've been outside with the family. We've been taking walks, riding bikes. I've been on my BMW motor scooter, and we've been visiting local ice cream shops. Not while on the scooter, of course, but we have been visiting the local ice cream shops. We have Twisty Treat and Mr. Freeze. Those are some of our local ice cream shops. In other news, I've been growing the color out of my hair. I don't know if you've ever tried to do that, but I have long brown hair. I have colored it since my younger son, Derrick, was in kindergarten. So that's been for about 14 or 15 years. And I am just seeing what comes out. I have white framing my face, and my original hair color is a little bit darker than what I've been coloring it. It is quite the process. I'm about a third of the way done. I'm putting off getting a new headshot for my business, my website anyways, until the transition is complete. So for now, if you go to thepharmacistvoice.com, you will see my brown-haired version, not the white-framed face version. I see on my list here in April, I went to the annual meeting of the Ohio Pharmacists Association in Columbus, Ohio. I love the CE sessions and the networking opportunities. Great conference. Plus, while I was at the conference weekend, I got to reconnect with my non-pharmacist friend Rachel and go for a walk with her on Saturday afternoon. The day after the conference was the Solar Eclipse. I don't know if everybody had the path of totality like my part of the country did, but on Monday, April the 8th, there was no school for my son or our school district, and we watched the eclipse together. He definitely saw it. Having him put on the glasses just didn't work for him. We even tried putting them on a large board so it would block out the surrounding light. But once we were in the area of totality where, the sun was completely blocked by the moon, Kraig looked right at it. It was safe, of course, because it was totally covered, and I know that he saw it. It was very cool to watch him experience that. Also, this spring, my husband Nathan and I started planning our family vacation for July. That'll be another trip for Derrick to go on. We are headed to Canada and also Vermont. I know it seems random, but we are going to go across Canada through Windsor. We're going to see Niagara Falls, Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal, and then we're going to head south to Vermont. What's in Vermont, you might be wondering? The Golden Dog Farm. Have you ever heard of this? There's a bunch of golden retrievers, a whole bunch of them. They call it a happy of golden retrievers because that's what you call a group of golden retrievers. They have an Instagram page. I'll put a link to it in the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. But we are going there. It is going to be so fun. We're going to play with golden retrievers, and I think we get an hour and a half with them. You pay money to play with dogs. Yes, I know it's crazy, but this is what we want to do on our way back from Canada. I look forward to telling you how everything went when I do my summer update in August. That was a lot for my personal update. I think I included some parts about my family there. Next, I will do a brief update about my business, The Pharmacist's Voice, and my podcast, The Pharmacist's Voice Podcast. That's what you're listening to. And then I will get to my favorite part, which is what I've been listening to, reading, watching, and playing. What's new with The Pharmacist's Voice LLC? Not much. I took off time to travel and prepare to travel, so I basically just worked on writing my book. It's called Pharmacist Podcaster. That'll be coming out after Labor Day. My publisher is Publishing in Doses. You can check out their website, publishingindoses.com. I'll put a link to it in the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. I also booked 2 in-person Podcasting 101 talks that are local to me. So if you're in Northwest Ohio, come on over. I'll put links to both in the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. One of those events is in June at my local library, and the other is in September. It's at a folks learning center where people in town teach other people in town, and the name of the place is the 577 Foundation. Again, I'll put links to both of those in the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. When I look at my 2024 vision board of things that I want to accomplish here in 2024, I can tell that I've made progress, but not much in this particular season. Spring was not a great season for making progress on my business. The impact of traveling definitely took its toll. Was it worth it? Oh, yeah. Made memories, spent time with my sister and my younger son. I did sign up for a couple of medical narration rosters when I got back from Europe, and I consider that progress too. So I'll just say that yes, I made progress, but not a lot. I'll end my business update right there, and I'll move on to the update about my podcast. At this point, I actually run 2 podcasts. One is a local podcast called the Perrysburg Podcast. We are on episode 44 this week, and I will not be updating you about that. I'll just talk about the Pharmacist's Voice Podcast. The Pharmacist's Voice Podcast is doing great. With this episode, we have 279 episodes. We've got listeners in more than 60 countries. This small little niche podcast has tens of thousands of downloads, and I still enjoy producing it. I pump out my solo shows and my interview shows every single Friday, and I love what I do. Coming up this summer, the Pharmacist Authors Series will return to the podcast. We've got episodes in June, July, and August. First up, we've got Dr. Steve Luke. Dr. Steve Luke kicks off the series in June talking about his book. It is called A Pharmacist's Story. A Pharmacist's Story, an authentic tale of true love, family, addiction, and the practice of pharmacy. To learn more, listen to the other episodes this summer. With that, I will end the update on my podcast, the Pharmacist's Voice Podcast, and I'll move on to my favorite part, which is an update on what I've been listening to, reading, watching, and playing. Since I took such a long time to talk about my trip to Europe, I will keep this part brief. What have I been listening to this spring? Music-wise, nothing noteworthy, so I'll skip that. Podcast-wise, though, I am really enjoying the NPR podcast called Trump's Trials. I am a Democrat, okay? I'm not trying to get political here, but I am super curious about how Trump's trials, former President Donald Trump's trials, will impact the November election. And I've also been listening to the School of Podcasting podcast. I love that podcast. I learn about podcasting stuff every time I listen. Dave Jackson, my podcasting coach, is the host. He does a great job. I'll put a link to both podcasts on thepharmacistvoice.com. As far as audiobooks, I just finished listening to All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I actually went between the Kindle version and the audiobook version. I think they call it Whisper Sync, where you can go between the two and it will remember where you are, whether you're in the Kindle version or the audiobook. It's really slick. Loved it. First time I've ever done that. I started that book when I was in Germany, and then I finished it last week when I was sick. It is a very, very long book, but very good. Highly recommend. Also this spring, I listened to Moneyball. I loved the movie, so I read the book. I listened to the book, actually, and that is by Michael Lewis. Fantastic book. If you don't like baseball, it might be hard to stomach. And my next two audiobooks are Poverty by America, and that is the title, Poverty by America, and the author is Matthew Desmond. Matthew Desmond. Poverty by America by Matthew Desmond. There you go. And the second one that I'm reading or listening to is I Guess I'm a Dad Now by Dr. Corey Jenks. That's the title. I Guess I'm a Dad Now by Dr. Corey Jenks. I started both of those, Poverty by America and I Guess I'm a Dad Now. I like both, but I have not finished them yet. All right, that's it for what I've been listening to. What have I been reading this spring? I typically only read printed books to my son, Kraig. I don't usually read printed books for myself, since I prefer audiobooks. I already mentioned that I read and listened to All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, so that one's out of the way. That was just for me, not for Kraig. With Kraig, I just finished reading Proud by Ibtihaj Muhammad, and then we started two new books at the same time. One is an oldie but a goodie, and it is called A Light in the Attic by Shel Silverstein. It's a book of poems and short stories for children. I have had that book since the 80s. The cover's very worn and yellowed, but my grandma gave it to me, and she even signed a message to me inside the cover. I love that book, and I am so happy to read it to Kraig. It's one of my most treasured books. We're also reading The Trumpet of the Swan. That's an old one too, and that's by E.B. White. The Trumpet of the Swan by E.B. White. It's about a swan who was born without a voice. He learns how to play a trumpet instead. My son has autism, Kraig has autism, and he is nonverbal. The story just might resonate with him. We'll see. We like it so far. That does it for what I've been reading. What have I been watching? This spring, we watched all 9 Star Wars movies in order from 1 through 9. I have never done that before. My husband loves Star Wars, and it turned out that Kraig liked them too. He loved the music. What else have we watched this spring? My husband and I found a new series. We have been watching it together. It's called Only Murders in the Building. It is a dark comedy. It stars Martin Short and Steve Martin. Dark though it may be, we are enjoying it. We've also been watching Shark Tank and America's Funniest Home Videos. Our son Kraig really likes the laughter and watching other people laugh in AFV, so we watch AFV. On my own, I've been watching all kinds of stuff, like YouTube videos especially. I love watching old reruns of Saturday Night Live on YouTube. I've also been watching a ton of travel videos this spring. I stopped watching a lot of my usual stuff like Mama Dr. Jones, The Girl with the Dogs, and all the other ones I usually watch because I needed to prepare for Europe. So the way that I prepared was instead of watching other stuff for pleasure, I ended up watching stuff to study what to pack, what to buy, what to avoid, all the things. And the YouTuber that I watched most was Nora Dunn, the Professional Hobo. I did not pick her based on her name. She just had fantastic content. She has been basically a digital nomad since 2006, I think, and she had a lot of good stuff to say. Nora Dunn was not the only voice I listened to. I listened to all kinds of YouTube videos and also some Instagram stuff. I was looking for shortcuts and how to avoid other people's mistakes. That was the content I was looking for. I ended up watching a video featuring somebody unpack their backpack from Europe, and I learned a lot about what to pack and what not to pack. So that's a tip for you. If you're looking for, videos about Europe and what to pack, watch somebody unpack their backpack and talk about it. I actually videoed myself unpacking my backpacks, plural. I had 2, one that I wore on my back and one that I strapped to my front or put over my shoulder. And I told my mom and dad I would share it with them. I'm not sure if I want to share it with my audience for my podcast, but I do have a video. I think that's enough about me talking about what I've been watching. You get the picture. There's stuff that I watch with my husband, stuff that we watch as a family, and stuff that I like to watch by myself. That ends what I've been watching. What have I been playing? I have not been playing many games lately on my iPad or in person with anyone. Although my son Kraig has a favorite board game, and it is called Candyland Castle. It is for toddlers, I will admit it, but that is kind of where he's at. It's his favorite board game, so we have played Candyland Castle several times. If you ever see this in the store, buy it. It is an extremely rare game. We bought it probably 15 years ago. It's a great game for people with developmental disabilities. What else have I been playing? I have played some Ticket to Ride versus the computer a few times, but I have not been playing versus other players. The people that developed the iPad app changed it. I don't know where the new app is. I haven't looked into it. So I feel like I've been living a game of Ticket to Ride where I'm on trains and constantly going to different countries. So I guess you could say I've been playing real life Ticket to Ride, right? One of these days, though, I will figure out the new app. I will figure out what it's called. I will buy it. I will use it. But today is not that day. I am catching up from being away in Europe. Now, with Derrick home this summer, whenever he is home and not traveling or umpiring baseball games or hanging out with friends, we hope to play board games with Derrick. One of our favorites is definitely Ticket to Ride. We also like the Settlers of Catan and Euphoria and some other ones as well. I feel like I'm ending on a positive note here, talking about my hope for playing board games and having fun this summer. So, with that, I will end my spring update. I hope you enjoyed hearing about my trip to Europe, my family, my business, my podcast, and what I've been listening to, reading, watching, and playing. This has been the Pharmacist's Voice Podcast, episode 279. Please visit thepharmacistvoice.com to read the show notes. In the show notes, you'll find links to the Ohio Pharmacists Association, the Golden Dog Farm in Vermont, which is where we'll be visiting in July, the books and podcasts that I mentioned, my other seasonal updates, my social media links, and more. Please feel free to reach out on social media and connect. If you know someone who might like this episode, please share it with them. And if you like this podcast, please subscribe to or follow the Pharmacist's Voice podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Thanks for listening today. I will talk to you next Friday.